How is the audio and lighting and any logistics?
That's good, man. I know that's a background, but I want that house. Yeah, no,
Yes.
looks good. Looks good for sure.
Good.
Yeah. Are you in Nashville?
I am.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. That's a rare experience, huh? Get to be home a couple days.
I'm home all week, thankfully.
Yeah, cool. I don't actually have travel plans till March, and that's probably a good thing right now, as crazy as everything is, huh?
I have, I think for the first quarter, I'm at 8 trips.
Wow. Yeah. There's a part of me, Blaine, that wants to do that again, and there's a part of me that's like, nope, I'm cool with being at home.
Yeah.
You know, and I love the trip, like my trip up to Nashville, I would do every week if, you know, like that I could get into. We were at my father-in-law had his retirement party this weekend in Jacksonville. And so we were at a big hotel, big I don't know, I guess it was a Delta hotel or something. And I was walking around the conference area thinking, oh man, I do not miss this. You know, now it doesn't have the hustle, but I think I portray as an extrovert, but I'm kind of an introvert, right? But I got to psych myself up at conferences. And once I'm there, I'm good, I'm rolling, everything's cool, but I got to get psyched up for it. And even more so, we've done presentations to 400 or 500 people before. Whew, man, that's the first 30 seconds. If I can get past the first 30 seconds, I'm golden, but those are nervous moments for me.
Are they?
Yeah. Yeah. Nina, that is, thank you for that, by the way. Nina's commenting on the surfboard photo back here. That is, it's actually a photo from a surf contest here in Daytona Beach in 1938.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I got another one here. It's just prints from the library is all it is, but I got another one here. This is the North Turn, and the original racetrack at Daytona Beach was on the beach, of course. And the first place I lived when I moved to this area, we rented a house in a little town called Ponce Inlet, which is kind of an end of the road type community, which is where the race was. So the backstretch of that original racetrack was A1A, went right kind of through my backyard. That's kind of cool.
That is.
Here's the best story about the North Turn. The North Turn is a restaurant now. And it's a big NASCAR restaurant. It's, lots of stuff about NASCAR there. I was in there on a lunch meeting one day, and our waitress was all excited because there was this NASCAR guy coming. I don't know a lot about NASCAR. My dad watched when I was growing up, so I know some drivers from previous generation. And there was some guy coming in doing some filming, big NASCAR superhero. The guy was probably about 80 or something like that. He was older gentleman. He was from these sand, the beach days. And the guy he walked in with, now she was all about the NASCAR guy. Blaine, you know AC/DC?
I do.
Brian Johnson from AC/DC was the guy he walked in with. I'm like, she's all into this 80-year-old NASCAR driver. I'm like, you've got a rock and roll icon in your restaurant right now, right? He had some show in Canada, I guess, and he was interviewing this. I can't remember the driver's name, but so we sat there and watched. That was my little brush with fame there.
Huh.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I think I probably told you when we were at the Legends that Alice Cooper frequents the Legends to play golf.
Yeah. He's not like his stage personality at all, is he?
No.
I didn't think so.
And I think he's either scratch or close to scratch golfer.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Very talented.
You could teach us a couple things, Blaine.
No doubt. Especially me.
Well, listen, I think if we'd have tracked all of our playing that day, I think we were about dead even.
Bravo. That was the fun part of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I started off strong. You finished up strong.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. What was your buddy's name there?
Tony Kittinger.
Yeah, cool dude.
Yeah,
cool. So we got a couple people rolling in here, Blaine. We got a little slow. John just made it in. John, welcome. We got Dave coming in. All right. So it's curious, obviously, as we get started. Where's everybody's from? Nina, John, Dave, got a couple others rolling in.
I'd love to know that.
Yeah. From
Boston.
All right, John. All right. All right. It's been a while since I've been in that city. Yeah. Brentwood, Tennessee. How close is that to you, Blaine?
I have met Nina before.
You have? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Very cold in Boston. Well, by Florida standards, it's cold here too, John, but I know I'm not going to get your sympathy. I will say I grew up in Wisconsin. I've lived in Alaska, and the coldest place I ever lived was Duluth, Minnesota. Yeah. Yeah, that was westernmost point of Lake Superior, man. That was I was there for about 5 years. That was a cold experience.
The 11th province.
Yeah, pretty much, right? It really is. It really is.
Even the accent.
Yeah, you betcha. Out and about in a boat.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I actually enjoyed Minnesota very much, but one of the cool things that Duluth's about 80,000 people, maybe a little bigger than that now. I don't know. It's been several years since I lived there, but the cold keeps it really keeps the population down. They have, if I'm not mistaken, the most green space per capita in the US.
Wow.
And so you get so many parks and so much opportunity to get outside. Now, of course, dead of winter, you better wear 2 parkas and your -70 lacrosse boots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was a fun place. It's set up on a bluff. It's a cool town.
I've never been.
It's a good place to be.
I've spoken in Minneapolis.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was in the middle of winter.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the weather seemed pretty similar to Chicago, which geographically makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, a little bit of information. Did you know Chicago being the windy city, that is not really about the wind?
I do remember that. I think it had more to do with the political climate of my history.
I read it last time we went through Chicago, and it was something about, I want to say like the World's Fair or something. I don't know if it was World's Fair. It was a big fair, and it was in New York, and Chicago's politicians were pulling for it. And so there was some infighting. And I think it was a New Yorker magazine called it the Windy City. Now, of course, a play on the wind off Lake Michigan. It was actually about these political debates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's your that and $1.50 will get you a cup of coffee anywhere, I guess.
Chicago's I love the architecture there.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. We went up to Wisconsin before the holidays to help my dad clean out some of his basement, and he's got to move eventually. He's having a tough time maintaining his house, so we're just getting a start on it for him. And I brought one of my daughters with me, and we stopped in Chicago for some deep dish pizza and see the bean, which is the cloud, and so we enjoyed a little bit of time there. I love Chicago. Spent a lot of time there growing up.
I have as well. It's a cool city.
Yeah, cool. Well, we got people rolling in. We got a good crowd showing up. We had a lot of registrations for this event. You're a popular guy.
Well, I think you're a popular guy, and we had a phenomenal response. I mean, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So really good. Even added a dozen or so this morning. I put a post out on LinkedIn. So, we'll let people roll in. We'll give it another 60 seconds or so, and then Blaine, I'm going to make a. You've seen me do this before. I'm pretty casual and informal about things, and so. I don't have your bio in front of me, but I've got a ton of respect for you, so I'm going to speak from there.
Sure.
And so we'll give you a quick little introduction, and then you'll take it away. But we'll make it as conversational as possible. My buddy Andy McDonough showed up. Blaine, I'll tell you what. I got a picture of me and Andy McDonough sitting in our kindergarten class, wearing the exact same, not polo shirt, rugby shirt.
Wow.
Yeah. So that friendship goes way back.
That's fun.
And Andy, welcome. Yeah, and everybody else. All right, people rolling in. So, Blaine, why don't I kick this thing off, and we'll get. I'm sure we'll have some people straggle in. But Blaine, I think I've known you about a year, huh?
Yeah, maybe a little more than that.
A little more than that. Met through a group on LinkedIn. For those of you who have attended social advisors webinars before, you know we're pretty informal about this. We like to keep it a relaxed environment. I'll tell you what, we try to host, the holidays got in the way a little bit, but we try to host at least one guest webinar a month. And love all the guests we have on. I'm super excited about you joining us, Blain.
Thank you, Charlie.
We hit January. You and I were talking about it. We planned this in January, and it kind of accidentally happens at the beginning of the year, right? Been talking about it since probably September, October or something. Blain and his team at Provincial Development Group have 17 years of working with independent advisors and mostly RIAs. Here's what I love about how we complement each other, Blain, is you go in and we've worked with a lot of clients that we can push opportunity to, but if their firm's not set up to take that opportunity, to follow up with people, to be able to process that opportunity that comes through the front door, they will fail. They'll get a couple clients here and there, but they will fail on their overall mission. And where you complement our services so much is you and your extraordinary team at Provincial Development. You guys go in and you build out the processes. You work with leadership to build out the processes that makes a firm scalable. And that's such an important piece. We're an agency by nature at Social Advisors, but that doesn't mean we're a design agency, right? For the most part, we're a business development partner. So we bring the opportunity to the door. Where you complement things so well is that you help these firms be set up for success once that opportunity arrives. And so the timing on this, though we didn't necessarily say, hey, let's do it in January because everybody's going to be thinking about their 2022 goals. But the timing, I think, is really perfect, which is why we got the response that we got for this webinar. I don't know if it's about your popularity or my popularity or whatever it might be, but I think the timing is really good. So what we've got prepared for you today is, I've seen Blain's presentation before. It's absolutely excellent. A lot of thought and research has gone into it. But we're going to make this as conversational as we possibly can. So if you've got questions, go ahead, put those in the chat. We'll probably wait till the end. It's about a 40-minute presentation, so we'll have some time at the end to go over those questions. And as I went through Blain's presentation and prep for today, I saw all kinds of places that I wanted to kind of interject my thoughts and ideas. And so we'll let Blain present, but I'll jump in from time to time and just kind of spur some conversation there as well. And so Blain Wease, thank you for gracing us with your presence. Appreciate that like crazy. I have the utmost respect for your expertise who you are as a professional. And we've had an opportunity to play some golf together and get to know each other on a personal level too. And I think you're a great guy on that side too. So I can't wait for the nuggets you're going to give our audience and give an opportunity to implement things like starting this afternoon, maybe even.
Yes.
Blain, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. So Charlie, before I jump into the content, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. We don't take that lightly. There's a lot of guests that you could have chosen. So much appreciated. And along the lines of what you said about why we work so well together is we're not deeply specialists in any given area where we just concentrate on one area and go 1,000 feet deep. So your model is very complementary to ours because the business development side that you enhance through your work at Social Advisors is a really strong add. And I'm excited about talking specifically about how that complements our approach to business development, because I think that synergy is going to be very apparent to the audience. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Wonderful. And
let me know just if you can confirm that works.
It is up and running, Blain, looking good. And then anybody, just kind of throw it out there too. I'll just make sure the audience can hear us well, Blain. If you guys have good audio, just go ahead and put in the chat. Let us know that you can hear us okay.
Great. Well, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that. Just a couple of additional things. We work exclusively in the wealth management space. Most of our work is between RIAs and broker-dealer firms. The range of clients that we work with contextually is firms that have 100 million in AUM to up to 5 billion. We are based in Nashville, and like Charlie said, we were founded in 2004. And then there's a little information about me as well there. So the specific areas of our firm, and you'll see how these tie together. These are our areas of focus in terms of client services, leadership, strategy, and execution. team and culture, client services and experience, and then growth and brand. And the interesting thing about how this presentation came about, and this harkens back to your comments about how we actually came up with this. When we get started with a client, Charlie, we go through a deep dive discovery of 6 to 8 weeks where we look at over 45 components of a firm, from their HR structure, compensation, leadership style, how they meet, how they serve clients, what they do for clients, and on and on. It's a very exhaustive approach. What we did was we started to aggregate data from the real world about where firms were successful around growing and where they struggled. And really that, from a very organic source, became the process of how we put this together. And the biggest aha for us out of that aggregation process was there were firms were doing a lot of things, and there were a lot of unintended consequences that were inhibiting growth that they hadn't considered. And so part of our role as an expert is to illuminate unintended consequences, because we want to remove barriers to growth and capture and identify opportunity. And so that became a really central part of how this content came together. We look at growth, Charlie, from 5 primary perspectives. The first is what we call mastering the fundamentals, and we'll unpack that in a moment. The second is mindset, which is tremendously important, how you think about growth, your motivation for growth. And then next we build, and these are like stair steps, so they each interlink with each other. The next is strategy. Do you have a defined strategy for growth? And we like to say that hope is not a strategy. So just hoping to grow is not necessarily going to qualify there by any means. And then once you've got your strategy, do you have the activity? Do you have the margin in your calendars to support the activity? Do you know what you're going to do on a consistent basis to create activity? And then the last part is, what resources would benefit your firm so that when you have the right fundamentals, mindset is dialed in, you have an effective strategy that's been vetted, you're doing the activity, do you have resources to augment that, and why is that important? And one of the phrases that we use a lot is, we don't live in an either or world, we live in a both and world. So it's not just this, it's not just that, it's the coming together of both and that really makes this work. And we'll illuminate more on that. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Charlie, but that's really our foundations of where we start.
Yeah, and I love, Blain, I love the and not or, right? And we talk about that a lot in marketing. In fact, somebody that I know you know well, Matt Halloran, was our guest a month or 2 ago. And that was a big thing that Matt and I talked about, right? They're heavy on podcasting, but they recognize that podcasting is not a standalone. We're heavy on LinkedIn and CRM and content marketing. But again, that's not standalone stuff, right? A podcast is great. You've got to do, really as much as you've got capacity for.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that we're doing this together today is the greatest demonstration of both and, because an attendee could think, well, Provincial focuses on growth, Social Advisors focuses on growth. Aren't they either or? Aren't they, in a sense, competitors? But you and I both have an abundance mindset that says, no, not in any way. We're 100% both and when we come together, we're actually stronger than just being isolated. And so I think what we're doing today testifies to that mindset.
Agreed.
So let's talk about mastering the fundamentals and why it matters to growth, because this is one of the most common areas that's missed in the growth conversation. So when we get started with a client, we define their core content around what's their vision, and vision is not some esoteric term. Vision is this: what do you want to be true about your firm in 3 years from now? And what's true today and what's not true today relative to that target? So vision is a clear sense of the future, because if you don't know where you're going, it's not possible to successfully get there. And so growth flows out of that, and that becomes tremendously instrumental. Same with mission. And we define mission very simply: what needs to be true for your vision to be possible? That's your mission. So if your vision is to grow your firm, part of your vision is growth oriented. You have to treat clients in a certain way to create retention and referrals. So if you don't have a mission that complements that approach to client services, now your vision is not going to be possible. That's the type of integration. And then core values flow two ways here. One set of core values is how do you treat your team? So this is a Southwest mentality where Southwest says the most important person in our business ecosystem is not the passenger on the plane. It's the flight attendant or the pilot. Because if they're not happy, passengers on the plane are not going to be treated well. So they turned the airline industry upside down because every other airline said the passengers are the most important, but we're not going to treat our team well. And we're going to hope that somehow our customers are happy in spite of the way that our team is functioning. And that just doesn't happen. So we believe very much in that. Take care of your team so they can take care of your client model. So things like how do we create exceptional client service offerings that would flow out of this core content? What's a well-coordinated client onboarding process? Again, all of these things should be informed by this core content. And a lot of people will say, Charlie, I don't have time to do that. I'm too busy. And I would say you don't have time not to, because when you do your core content, and we have a proprietary way of doing this with our clients, you make 80% of your future decisions in advance because it becomes very simple. Yeah. Does this align with my vision and mission or not? Does this represent my core values or not? If it doesn't, it's an easy no. And if it does, it's a simpler yes. And so it's a very efficient way to make decisions. So there's a lot of examples about how this plays out in the growth mindset. So how do we authenticate this? How do we do this ourselves? Well, here's our firm summary that comes directly out of our core content. So we practice this internally. So Provincial Development Group serves wealth management firms by equipping their leaders to lead more effectively, because we recognize everything rises and falls on leadership, as John Maxwell has famously said. So we can do you and I can do everything else well with a client, but if they have ineffective leadership, what we do is going to break down at some point. Mm-hmm. We accomplish this through an engaged. We have to have a partnership with our client. Has to be a high trust, well-functioning relationship, which is our vibrant collaboration with our clients. And we go beyond, which is what you were speaking to, Charlie, what the traditional parameters of consulting, which is advice-based. We're actually get stuff done based instead of just telling someone what they should be doing. Firms that partner with us appreciate the achievement of what matters most, compelling results that enable greater clarity, conviction, and confidence. Our clients tell us they appreciate the depth of our experience, our bias for progress, and our integrated approach. So this framework right here is tremendously important. So when we talk about growth internally, we talk about how do we grow in a way that's consistent with what we have here. Charlie, anything you want to add to that?
There is. I'm chatting real quick with Mike. Mike, absolutely. We will have a recording available. So if you have to duck out early, no problem whatsoever. I'll tell you what, a couple things from your fundamental slide. When you're talking about core, core values and mission, we talk a lot about storytelling and content marketing, Blain. And so much of when we're interviewing and through our onboarding, when we're interviewing clients, to get, to start to tell that story and put content together for them and craft a good campaign, it is about the value and the mission. It's also about, and kind of your final point on there, it's also about your audience, right? So how do those values and missions impact the audience that you're prospecting or communicating with, or the clients, right? So a lot of storytelling, a lot of niche, and I know you've got some more information on niche markets later on in the presentation. So we'll dive deeper into that.
And if you think about it, I so appreciate you bringing that up, because if you think about it, a clear vision and a clear mission allow a coherent story, because the story just organically flows out of what you've already predetermined as a priority to you. So there's such a great link there. So moving from mastering the fundamentals to mindset as key, These are just a couple examples of how we work with clients where mindset is involved. The first is, if you have an abundance versus a scarcity mentality, this is going to have a tremendous impact on growth. Here's an example. Charlie, have you ever been in a buying situation where the seller seemed desperate? Like if they didn't make the sale, they might not be able to feed their family.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably more often than not, actually.
How, as a consumer, how did that impact your view of that person and the company?
There's not a lot of trust or confidence there, that's for sure.
Yep. So that's a real world example of, if you have an abundance mindset, you communicate differently.
Yeah.
If you have a scarcity mindset, it's tremendously palpable, and you can tell, you can see the effect if you're paying attention on the person who's considering doing business with you. Because just, you talked about living in Minnesota, and I know that the state bird there is mosquitoes, right? So you have repellent. Well, the scarcity mindset is a repellent for potential business.
Yeah.
The abundance mindset is, oh, this person is confident in what they have. Maybe I should be confident in what they have. And that has tremendous ramifications. So we look at the next set of, and again, just a couple examples of mindset. There's 3 mindsets around how you relate to life circumstances, including growth. One is, with my growth strategy, what can I control? An easy example here is, I can control my activity level. Wonderful. Focus on that. That's what you can control. The second question becomes, what can you influence? Well, I can't make someone do business with me, but if I articulate what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and I know enough about you, Charlie, to make a case of why you should consider doing business with us, I can influence your decision. We're trying to influence people's decision to help them grow their firm today in this presentation. That's perfectly acceptable, and we should be. That's why they came. That's why they took time today out of their schedule to do this. And then, what are the circumstances that you can neither control or influence? And with your mindset, if it's skewed, you spend too much time on the third one, such as the economy or what a competitor's doing, which you have no control over or influence. And every minute that you spend on 3 is a minute you don't spend on 1 or 2. And so this becomes tremendously important.
Yeah, the third one is an important point too, right? I mean, you think about, especially in our industry, right? Your example of the economy, that's where stress and fear live. That's right. Whether that's an investor or frankly an advisor who's stressed out about his or her investor clients that are going to be impacted by the economy, right? Or what other circumstances, right? That stress and fear not only impacts our mindset, it impacts our physical health. It impacts our, frankly, our desire to do our job, our relationships at home, everything, right? So,
yeah, you're right. You are completely right, Charlie. So the third one here is the ownership mindset versus the excuse mindset. So if we see ourselves as victims, we will not have the courage to take ownership. If we see ourselves as people who have agency over what we can do, we'll have tremendous freedom, and we won't fall nearly as much into that fear and anxiety trap that you just talked about. The other reason that this is up here under the 3 possibilities is, you should clearly articulate to a prospect what you can control about your future in the relationship, what you can influence, and what applies to neither, because that gives your prospects a sense of what it's like to do business with you and how you view that relationship long term. So then we have active and passive. And I find a lot of advisors can fall into the passive trap, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks. But to have active relationships, first of all, you're proactive, so you're determining what you want to happen. You're intentional, so you've carved out time, resources, developed skills to be intentional and good at mastering those opportunities. You're purposeful, which leads right back to the core content, which is why we start with that, because I will often ask advisors, well, why do you want to grow? What's the purpose of growth? What are you trying to accomplish? If you can't answer things like that, it's problematic, because you should know why that's important. And we'll cover more of why that matters in a moment. Passive is you're reactive, unintentional, and you're waiting for things to come to you. And passivity sets a very negative precedent for the relationship. I don't want a passive advisor. I want a proactive advisor who has my best interest at heart. And so you train people how to view you based on how you filter through these two options.
Yeah. I would say, Blain, to make a couple of points on there. I still do a lot of coaching, and the norm is for someone when they're, you get social with somebody. You're going to talk more about this a little bit later, but you get social with somebody, you're ready to move them down a path into, even becoming a prospect. The norm is to ask permission to take the next step. I would say that that's the wrong way to approach that, right? As a sales coach, as a business development coach, I don't want to ask if it's okay if we have a meeting. I want to say something like, what's a good day for you next week? And that's a very subtle difference than can we meet next week versus what's a good day for you next week. But that assertive language sets a heck of a lot more meetings on a calendar than can we.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially if you've earned the right by asking the questions and serving them by leading them to that point in the relationship.
Yeah, certainly. Timing is everything, no doubt.
So we wrap all of that up into this slide here, and that is this. However you treat a prospect in the growth phase of the relationship or the opportunity phase is how you're training them to think about what it's going to be like to be your client. So if you are passive, if you don't follow up, if you don't seem interested, if you're not asking good questions, all of that is going to send a much louder, clearer message to the prospect about what it's like to do business with you. And again, people are generally this is an unintended consequence area. They think, well, I don't want to seem pushy, or I don't want to seem this or that. And in the very process of avoiding something, which is reactionary, they're actually creating the opposite impression of what they think they're creating, and it's negative.
Yeah. And So yes, exactly. The first interaction guides the rest of the experience. Here's a terrible story I'm going to share with you, Blain, and our audience, right? Because it happens to everybody. And this was kind of happenstance. We changed our website maybe 6 months ago. And about the time we changed our website, I did a presentation for a group. And one guy reached out to me on the contact form on the website. But there was like a 48-hour period where that contact form was not yet speaking to our CRM. Website went live, and it went live prematurely, mistake on our side. I missed that message for about 2 weeks. And when I finally got back to him, hopefully he's on here, right? Because I want him to know I'm really sorry about it. He won't, like, I've tried to follow up with him. I tried to explain what the situation was. I haven't been able to talk to the gentleman. And, so that misses opportunity for us, right? So he was proactively reaching out, took me 2 weeks to get back to him, mistake on our side, but that sets the tone, or at least he expects that sets the tone for what the rest of the relationship looks like. And I can't blame him, frankly.
Yep. A little bit of a painful example, but you're exactly right. And to your opening comment, we've all been there. I've certainly been there more times than I would care to remember, but you're right. But it's informative. So when we look at this area of wealth management and growth, we typically see 3 types of firms, and the first 2 are the most common. And we call it firm A is the home field advantage. And the reason I'm going to explain this in a moment as to why this is so important. The home field advantage is really strong on client services. They're very process oriented, great ops, great tech, etc. On the whole, those firms can tend to be weaker on business development. And so here's the challenge. They have great things to offer, but they struggle to market themselves and tell their story, back to what you were talking earlier about communication. So we want to bring symmetry there, because the skill set and the mindset and the gifts that created all those wonderful processes and client service experiences are different than the skill set to tell the story and be able to create interest. The second firm is the opposite. So these are the firms that are weaker internally, weaker on process, sometimes weaker on client services, but they're excellent at projecting an image. And so how we came across this is we were working with some clients that were firm A type clients, and they were losing competitively to firm B type clients. And they were asking us, why? I know that we do a much better job on financial planning. I know we do a much better job on this or that, but it's not happening. So we started unpacking this as to why that was happening. And this is where we came to. And then firm C is what our work is designed to lead to. And that is where you're strong both wise, and you have the both and rather than the either or, so that you can have a strong internal presence and then know how to tell that story. So back to motivations, which again ties back to the fundamentals. If your primary reason for growth is about you as the owner, you as the advisor, there are some real negatives to that, because that's another form of repellent. If you have a clear vision, and part of your clear vision is to serve clients with excellence and make a difference in people's lives, that's attractive. That's something your team can rally around, your partners can rally around, synergistic relationships like you and I have, Charlie. When you make it about other people and how you're going to serve them, and that is your vision for growth, that is something that people can get excited about. And back to your story example, that's a story worth telling. Yeah. And the key here is, if you tell people that you're growing to help others, but all of your behavior and talk represents the first one, people are going to see through it. It's a very thin veneer. So your approach to growth will authenticate where you're really at between these two mindsets.
Love that.
One of the videos that we use a lot in our client interaction, especially in the beginning, is this Start With Why video that Simon Sinek does, because he really talks about this as the why being the most important, the how being the second most important, and the what being the least important. And like every other industry, most firms make the mistake of presenting to prospects largely in reverse order. They focus heavily on what, heavy focus on financial planning or investing or whatever their suite of services represent, a little bit about how, and usually nothing about why. Well, that's the reverse order of the most effective storytelling and the most effective way to create interest.
This is the book and the video. There's, you can basically consume a book in a 17-minute video, but that is an inspiration for the content that we create as well. It's in most of my PowerPoints. It is, if you haven't seen that video, highly recommend it.
Yeah, well said. So now we start making all of this real, and this is a proprietary process that we've created. And this literally goes from the very top of the funnel of thinking to how do I bring a new client on board? So we start with core content, because that should inform your approach to growth, your motivation to growth, where you're going to grow, all of those things. The second equation there is, what markets are you going to target? Again, the more specific you can make these, could be geographical, it could be a segment, could be a company, could be any number of things. That's not for us to determine, that's for the firm to determine. We can help shape that conversation if they're looking for help. Once you determine what's the profile of who we're looking for, then we need to take these tangible steps. Number one, what are we going to say to that audience? How are we going to find that audience? What streams are they swimming in so that we can swim there with them? And then what resources are going to help us tell our story and communicate effectively once we reach them? Once we've determined the answers to that, then it becomes even more practical. And we ask ourselves, what activity as an advisor am I doing consistently in order to gain results or yield results through those specific areas of focus? What marketing activity will augment that, which is, I think, a wonderful area where we have great linkage between what your focus is and what we do. And then what's the prospect pathway? So from the first meeting or first conversation with a potential client to the last meeting where we might be asking them if they're comfortable moving forward with what they've seen, we want to know what are the basics there. And again, back to the mindset, that should be very intentional. It should be very purposeful. It should be mapped out. It shouldn't just be, I'm hoping for the best and follow, call me if you have questions. That's not a good example of leadership. Charlie, any thoughts around this business development strategy?
I love that it's documented. Where we come in is obviously the go-to-market piece of that. That's where social advisor serves. As I was looking at this slide, watching your presentation, Blaine, and also you've got a question slide coming up, unless you change it around since the one I saw. It strikes me that most of our industry is winging it, right? Most people go through or get their early industry training through a wirehouse, Morgan or Merrill or UBS or wherever they might start their career, and unfortunately, a lot of the sales training in our industry is antiquated, and hopefully they're coming along a little bit, but the evolution of information at our fingertips changes the way that people purchase, right? And so you've still got this cold call, cram activity kind of approach being jammed down the throats of young advisors. And I think the whole world has changed, right? You've got to be present and communicative without being overburdening in your sales process.
The way that's very well articulated. The way we think about that is this. A lot of sales in the general business community or ecosystem is transactional, right? Buying gas is transactional. A good financial advisor is transformative. You do your work with excellence and you're going to bring some element of transformation or improvement to the lives of your client. Here's the disconnect right around what you just said. If you take a transactional approach to presenting your firm or representing your firm within a world of transformation, it's totally incompatible.
Yeah.
And so that you create a complete disconnect between the audience, between the message and the recipient.
Yeah. So
now that we've talked about these areas, what do we do with actual activities? So this opportunity stream is a great slide to look at. What are the ways that we can actually create relationships or be in the right stream to create interest? So of course there's referrals, but referrals are well beyond client referrals. You and I have a referral relationship where we would be comfortable referring people back. That's a COI type relationship. There's associations, there's all kinds of opportunities there just beyond clients, as important as that is. Yeah. Niche markets, very important to focus on. We had a client who just focused primarily on Microsoft executives, and they knew the HR ecosystem of Microsoft better than the executives. So they would schedule their whole review cycle around the HR calendar of Microsoft. Well, what do you think that did for their referrals? Because they had so much credibility. So it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
And then speaking, podcasts, webinars, things like that are another terrific opportunity. You mentioned Matt and Kurt and what they're doing with Proudmouth and their whole organization. That's a terrific opportunity there. Events, community involvement, and things like golf that you and I enjoyed several weeks back. So there's a lot of areas. I don't recommend someone do all of these, but I also recommend that you don't just do one of them, because that's too limited and you're not. It's good to diversify here.
Yeah, I love the conversation around niche markets. I find, we've got, I think FINRA last year, their number they released was 687,000 registered reps and RIAs in the country. And so that is, I mean, that's a lot of competition, right? I mean, I don't know how many advisors in Nashville, Blaine, but 15 probably, right? A whole bunch, right? I'm in a smaller town than you, but it's a saturated industry, probably, maybe medical and legal in front of it. The more narrow you get with your niche, Microsoft executives, we had a client that prospected Kaiser Permanente hospitals because they had a specific KEO plan in their benefits package, right? So when you get narrow, the first thing that happens is you remove a lot of that competition. That's right. The second thing that happens is you've got the ability to more personalize your communication. You can speak their language, right? So even if we've got a client in Lansing, Michigan, who focuses on state of Michigan employees, right? Again, in Lansing, 1,500, 2,000 advisors. What are there, 4 maybe focusing on state of Michigan? And he doesn't own the plan. His firm doesn't own the plan, but he can still speak to the specifics within that plan. And that's important about niche. I love referrals as well. Blaine, you and I have had this, I think, probably public debate on LinkedIn. I love referrals. I'm not a big fan of asking for them, right? I want to make sure that your clients and your COIs know that you're open for referrals. I do like gathering social intelligence around my best clients and asking for the right introductions. Yeah. Right. So, but you're right. You can't, it's difficult to do all of it. But certainly there's these, I mean, it's a great list.
The other thing I would add, the final thing I'll add for the sake of time, is whatever stream you're going to swim in, make it authentic, because of inauthenticity with where you're interacting with people will really be problematic. So if you love speaking, if you love doing presentations as I do, focus there, focus on your strengths. Don't spend all your time trying to do something that you don't enjoy or you're not very good at.
Good point.
In terms of COIs, very often advisors think far too narrowly about the opportunities here. So this is just a sample list of areas that we've helped cultivate relationships, but you can see this goes way beyond just the traditional CPA or attorney. There's a lot more opportunity out there if you think more globally. And a lot of these areas don't have a lot of people, don't have a lot of advisors reaching out to them. And so it's a lot less competitive in the COI or centers of influence relationships. And so we encourage people to think more globally here. And of course, this list is going to be based on your model, right? If you're an RIA, you might be more inclined to talk to someone in insurance than if you are a broker dealer, depending on your model. So there's specifics here, but it's just meant to show people that it's a big world out there.
Yeah, one that I'd add to that we've seen some success with is high-end real estate agents. Yeah, you've got someone relocating to town. They're one of the first people that know it, so it gets you in front of opportunity before others. And they're transactional professionals, right? So you've got an affluent audience, or you've got an affluent client base. They want to know when they're exchanging real estate as well. So there's a natural synergy there.
And I would add commercial real estate to that.
Sure.
You can have the same kind of thing there, but great point.
Yep.
So the other thing that we look at in the activity stage is we like to segment the stage of the relationship for some reasons that we'll get into. So this is the basic framework that we work with. First stage of the relationship is social, followed by suspect, prospect, and then client or COI. And the social stage is you don't know enough about them to know if you should even have a conversation. So just recognizing not knowing is natural, but respond appropriately to the stage of the relationship. And so social stage is just about connecting with people. It's not about a hard agenda to get something from anyone.
Yeah. Don't connect and pitch somebody on LinkedIn.
Precisely. Yeah.
Connect, maybe get to know them, comment on their content, Don't pitch immediately.
Exactly. So the suspect phase is this: you've gotten to know them and you've yielded potential interest, but you don't know nearly enough about them to know if you would be a right fit or if they would be a right fit for you. So suspect is, I suspect there might be something more to talk about here, but I'm still heavily in the I don't know what I don't know category. So an example of this is, Charlie, you might be in the market for a new advisor, but your brother-in-law recently went to work for Merrill Lynch. And no matter how good I am, you're going to go work with him because of the family dynamic. Well, you're in the market, but it doesn't mean that you're a fit for me because of that. So it's meant to vet things here. The next stage is the prospect phase. And the reason that we don't lump everyone into the prospect is because it's far too big of a funnel with way too little accuracy to know where the relationship is at. So we define this stage as this: the person's committed to finding a new advisor. They've already determined that. They know enough about you to consider you as an advisor and your firm as an entity that would fit for them. There's a reasonable potential for mutual fit, and they want to make a decision within 90 days. So that's how we quantify what we call a prospect, so that you can follow up appropriately, because no one wants to be followed up in the social stage like they're a prospect. It's like, it's just completely inappropriate.
Now, here's the comment I would make, Blain, is that most, I might say all, but probably I could be proven wrong when I say all, but so most of our purchasing decisions boil down to timing, right? We buy gas when we need gas. We buy milk when when we're at the bottom of the gallon, whatever that might be. And so much of that is true in that financial services relationship, right? That advisor-client relationship. Usually it's a milestone event that'll trigger some need, The difficulty I believe that most advisors have is staying present in some capacity until, nurturing, keeping their brand present, offering some value until the timing is right for that particular person, and then finding out when is that timing right.
That's right.
It speaks to what we do with consistent content marketing, but also measuring how each prospect, let's call them suspect at that point, how each suspect in that funnel is interacting with communication, is checking out certain pages of your website that might trigger some buying signals. It's identifying those trigger points that help you understand, if you're nurturing 150 people, which 5 is the timing right for right now for that, that more call to action type outreach.
And that's why we addressed at the beginning of the presentation, Charlie, the intentionality. Because if you don't have the intentionality mindset, you will never do what you just described. Yeah. So the reason we prioritize, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's pretty comprehensive. Number one, it helps you prioritize your time and resources on follow-up, which is exactly what you were just saying. It enables you to map out a pre-client relationship so you have structure to it and it's proactive. You're better informed to project financial data for your firm because you actually have some accuracy to a forecast instead of just hoping for the best. Perhaps most importantly, you're appropriate with your next steps so that it never seems like you're ahead of the client or you're trying to get the client to someplace they're simply not yet at. It helps you be disciplined so you can have much more thoughtfulness to how you're building relationships and how you're seeking a mutual fit. Helps you be much more honest with yourself and the people you're building relationships about where you're actually at, because you have a reality check to the equation. You can build a realistic view of your activity funnel based, again, on timing, like you just said. And it helps you better align your messaging so that you're in sequence with the place and time and space and time that the prospect's in, and not just where you'd like them to be. Awesome. So a prospect pathway, this is a very simplified example that we would use with clients, but after a social meeting, send them a thank you note, share a blog on a topic that they brought up, whether they ever do business with you or not. If you find out there's enough interest, have a suspect conversation with them where you're just asking them questions, just getting to know them. Send an introduction about your firm in a generic way, letting them know here's a resource to find out more information if you're interested. send an email summarizing the meeting. Charlie, here's what I heard you say is most important. Here are the things that it sounds like you're focused on over the next year. I listen to you. I understand. I'm in tune with you. And then mapping it through the prospect relationship stage, where it's more specific, more defined, more involved. But it's not tremendously difficult. There's not like 78 steps here, but it just gives you a visual of, oh, this can be a little more disciplined than, back to your term of winging it and hoping for the best that you mentioned earlier.
I love the summary stage of that, Blaine, just so you know you're both on the same page, right?
That's right.
And even in some kind of written format so that you've got reference in the future.
Exactly. That is exactly right, which is why the CRM is so important.
Okay.
So the messaging mindset here is, no matter how polite anyone seems, at the end of the day, everyone's asking them the question, why should I care? And so the more proactively you can answer that question, why should you care? And I like to use this example. If someone is really interested in doing estate planning and you just tell them, Charlie, we do estate planning, that's going to have minimal impact. But if I say to you, Charlie, in our last meeting, you and your wife seemed to be particularly dialed in about estate planning. You talked about this situation, you talked about this inheritance. As you get to know more about us, I think it's only fair that you understand how we would approach that, because I don't know if we're in alignment with what you're looking for. Do you mind if I spend a few minutes unpacking our estate planning to see if that lines up with what you and your wife are looking for? Because I want you to make an informed decision when you feel like the timing's right. Both are, in essence, saying you do estate planning, but what a contrast.
You know, there's power in the statement, Blaine. I don't know if we're the right fit, right? There's power in that statement. And we want to help, you know, we're here to help people, but we're also here to grow business. And so I don't want to, I don't want to ignore that side of it. There's power in that statement. I don't know if we're right for you. Right.
And it's authentic, right? I don't know.
Yeah. But
I'm here to help both of us get closer to determining that, which is back to why we have those relationship stages. So mastering your messaging, this may be one of the single most problematic areas with advisor. They don't have their messaging dialed in. They haven't got it well-versed. They haven't practiced it. They're just saying what they've been saying for 10 years, even though it's not been particularly effective. And so dialing in your messaging and knowing how to distinguish yourself, role-playing, getting professional coaching or help. I think this is one of the areas where we have the greatest impact with the firms that we work with, is we do a lot of role playing, and we really want to help people dial in. We want to give them difficult situations, easier situations, see how they respond. But I always say this: if you can't message well to your peer in your office, you're not going to message well to a stranger in a situation where you feel anxious. So I'd much rather make my mistakes internally and not at the stadium on Sunday afternoon. So that's this is an area of real opportunity for advisors, and it's where you can set yourself apart.
Yeah, and practice matters. Do it, if it's not role playing that you're comfortable with, do it in front of the mirror, record yourself on your phone, whatever it is, but practice matters.
Excellent point. One of my favorite topics in the growth equation is the power of good questions. I don't think there's a single thing that you can do with more proficiency to set yourself apart than knowing how to ask the right questions. Some of our favorites here: what kind of attributes are you looking for in an advisor? What are the 3 most important things that you'd look to accomplish with if you were to engage with us? Based on what you learned so far about us, what's caught your attention? There's a lot of great questions, but I really like the ratio of doing about 80% of the listening and letting the client do 80% of the talking, and just continue to ask questions, continue to dig in here. It will, if the advisor is doing all of the talking and they are not listening, it really is problematic to set the precedent for the relationship. Understanding your data. This is just a very helpful mindset to track where have I been successful, what relationships are helpful, where am I not, how do I focus on the area that are producing fruit, and how do I minimize the time and things that aren't producing anything. So just simply understanding where's my business coming from, documenting it, looking at it year to year. Doesn't take a lot of time if you just keep a basic report up once a month and then do a year-end tally. Trends and data are tremendously important around growth. And to your point earlier about the world changing, helps you stay current and more relevant. So it's a great exercise to do.
Sure. And if you're, there's, some of the industry CRMs, Redtail, Wealthbox, and others, they've got good data. There are other, there's other platforms out there that will help you. You can grab that type of report at a glance anytime you want to, right?
Yeah. So marketing resources, we use our introductory video, which is clients talking about us talking about some of what's unique. We use that extensively. We have some digital resources, some PowerPoint introductions. These are all things that we've invested in from a branding standpoint and professional graphics, et cetera, because we think just like a hotel lobby, where does a hotel spend all the money? On the lobby to make a good first impression. We very much agree with that mindset. And a lot of companies will try and cut corners here, and it really is costly. There's a lot of unintended consequences to coming across unprofessionally. And if you're dealing with a higher net worth individual, their standards are higher than the average citizen because they've been trained to appreciate the quality of a brand and the quality of appearance.
For sure.
Same with the website, continuity around the website. The last thing that you want to develop is, if I have a conversation with you, then look at your website and then look at some other digital asset. And I think I'm dealing with 3 different firms, although you all share the same name. It's not going to make a very good impression. There's a reason big brands spend so much on marketing continuity, and it's because people notice it, and you don't want to create self-inflicted wounds from a messaging standpoint. So we have this is our client journey map, very simple. We can talk clients through this, but it gives us the chance to tell a story. And what I remind people on presentations is that 80% of the population learns visually. So if you don't have a visual way to aid your story, you're going to have less credibility than the person who does.
Keep that in mind when you're building a new website. So many websites out there that are very, very text heavy, and where you can embed a video or an image to replace text, always do it.
Yeah, we believe that so much that we built our entire website around video content because we wanted to articulate that message. I think we have over 80 videos on our website on all different topics. So if people want to look at that. So this just talks about different ways to get connected to people. Certainly some of this has come out of the last couple of years, but just diversifying that and recognizing that the world has changed and being open to different ideas is important. So I'm going to save the common pitfalls, Charlie, and the common best practices for the sake of time and for the recording and what we're going to share with the attendees, because I want to get to I want to be able to get to this 3 key takeaways and then the Q&A. And also just to let people know, I told Charlie I'm willing to stay on until every question's been answered. So even if people have to drop off after the hour, I want to make sure that we address the Q&A completely. So I've built margin into my calendar. And Charlie, I think you're in the same situation.
Yeah, I do the same. So I'm good for as long as we need.
So creating a process so it becomes scalable. You can't create scale if you don't have process. It's just not possible. Dialing in your messaging so that you can differentiate your firms and people clearly understand what you're talking about and why they should care. And then if you need help, reach out to help, whether it's social advisors on what they're doing or a firm like ours. It's a very easy ROI to justify to get help that's going to help you grow. The numbers work in your favor. And so if we can be helpful, we can certainly be a resource to do that. One note here, we put out a weekly video called Firm Foundations, where we take a topic like this and in 3 or 4 minutes unpack it. If that's something you're interested in, the email address is up there. You're welcome. There's no cost to these. We've generated, I think, over 60 of them so far. So it's just a great way to get free content that augments this and support this kind of messaging on an ongoing basis. And then the last thing I'll say before we get to Q&A is, as a thank you for the people that registered and attended, we're offering a growth readiness assessment. It's normally just under $700. But for the first 3 people that reach out to us, no obligation for anything else, we'll take you through our process and give you some real-time feedback just as a thank you for being on here. So if that's of interest, you can reach out, and the first 3 folks that contact us, we're going to give this at no charge. So here's our contact information. We're easy to get a hold of. All of this is connected through the website. And with that, Charlie, let's jump into the Q&A, and I'll turn the keys back over to you to navigate that and be here to be a resource to folks.
Yeah, and I've got a little slide because we want to share something too in our appreciation, Blain. We don't have Nina says she's one of the first 3, so count her in, Blain.
Okay.
Let's see here. One of the things I made note on, when I went through your presentation earlier, getting prepared for our conversation today, I made note, one of the things that I say to just about every coaching client I have, Blain, carving out time for business development and not each and every day, but at least time blocking for it is such an important step. Here's the thing. The activity you put into business development is the predicator of where you're going to be 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. It is also the one thing that has no impact on today. So when you get busy with clients, it gets pushed to the back burner before anything else. And I know, as busy as we all are, that'll happen multiple days in a row. Those of you who are here are nodding because you can identify with this, right?
Yep.
So business development is something that you need a time block for. It's it's the first thing, again, that falls off your agenda when you get busy with client deliverables.
And that's exactly why on our best practices, we have carve out consistent activity blocks in your calendar. If you don't plan for it, they're not going to happen and it will slip. So you're exactly right.
That's right. Blain, my New Year's resolution was to be more thoughtful. And so I actually, and it seemed weird when I did it, I put a time block on twice a week to sit down and be thoughtful. Think about the people around me. How can I have a positive impact on people today? It seems weird that I take, I have to be so, I don't know, so just I have to put it on the calendar to be thoughtful. Seems like there's a contrast there, but it's the only way I'm going to get it done. Right. And so far I've been good with that.
Good for you. That's impressive, Charlie. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, so I'm going to see if I can't share my screen real quick. Blain is probably going to pop up with a bunch of, there we go. We've got a service that we are a product, actually, a piece of software that we have. Content marketing. Oh, something happened here. Give me 1 second. Always a little technical error. And okay. So we've got content marketing is a big part of what we do. And of course, I can expand this a little bit. We want to get our content, especially LinkedIn content, where so many professionals that we're prospecting reside. We want to get that in front of as many eyeballs as possible. So we've actually got 5 agency partners that we work with on this piece of software called Post Party. And what Post Party does, it takes an engagement pod concept, which is really just working cooperatively with other people to interact with the content you post on social media. What that does is it tips the algorithm on LinkedIn. So Post Party, we run 8 post parties a week, and they're at scheduled times. And if you want to take part in one, you can have your post ready, post it, copy the link into this little piece of software at socialpostparty.com. And then 15 people are going to be required to interact with your content. You've got to do that for 15 people. So it's just working in a cooperative environment to help get your content in front of a much, much larger audience on LinkedIn. So our offer today, just for being here, thank you, is to try, kick the tires on this thing for 30 days. So you put that promo code in, 30 days free, and you'll have 30 days and you can cancel any time on that. So
and Charlie, just to validate this, we as we learned about this, we're jumping into the mix because this is very complementary to our thinking, and we're really excited to be participating in this with you on LinkedIn. So we think there's a tremendous value here, and it aligns very well with what we just talked about.
Yeah, you've got to, again, timing is everything, right? So if you can't stay present in front of those social relationships that you're creating, and even those suspect relationships, then your brand doesn't exist to them, right? So content marketing on LinkedIn, across social media, and email strategy, and I will say that there's plenty of industry pre-approved type content. I'm not going to bag on anybody specifically, but it's not authentic. It's not you, right? So personalize it, be you. But post-party helps you then make sure that you're keeping that brand in front of that, that social and that suspect audience that you're building there.
So, love that.
We had a few people had to leave, of course, because we're drifting over just a little bit. Daniel would love to be in your top 3 as well, Blain.
Okay.
So we've got that information as well. I'm kind of looking through lots of great feedback, but not a lot of questions. Blain, I'll ask you a question because I think it's probably one that people aren't even thinking about. What's your average engagement look like with a firm? How long? What's the time, and how often do you meet?
So our discovery period, which is the 45 to 55 components that we examine, that's a 68-week process. Deep dive, we interview the entire leadership team, most of the team, if not all of the team, 5 clients, any strategic partners. We've even talked to custodians or broker-dealer contacts, if that's relevant. So it's a very comprehensive process. At the end of that, our model is very much like a healthcare model in that we don't treat people statically. We only offer to help people in areas that we've quantified that they need help. And so it's a very unique, very intuitive approach to have an impact where we know that we can. And then our engagements last on average between 9 months and 20 months. And that's our engagement is taking the things that we learned in discovery where we can help that vision become a reality. And that includes a series of projects that we co-labor with the client on. And that's our engagement period. So it's a very deeply embedded relationship. And again, when we exit the scene at the end of our engagement, we have fully operationalized everything so that it's up and running, trained on, technology supported, staff supported, and it's optimized in their environment.
Very cool. Very cool. So, and Cami jumped in and sent us a note. She's got some messages already about your offer, Blain. So for those of you who are interested in spending some time with Blain, by all means, send an email, put it in the chat. We'll wait around for just a little bit. My sincere thank you for being here. You are a wealth of knowledge. You've got a ton of experience in working with RIAs, and of course, everybody's got differentiators, everybody's different, but gaining from that 17 years of experience you have is only going to benefit the people you work for in the future. So
terrific. I'll say this in wrapping up, Charlie, because I know our time is there, but one additional item is if anyone that's still on is a part of, uses Schwab as a custodian, we're on their market square as a approved preferred provider, and we have a special Schwab discovery and process that aligns with their ecosystem. So that's an area where we have a lot of experience, and that's a niche market for us where we actually have alignment with their initiatives and priorities. So one point of data that wasn't in the presentation, but it could potentially apply to someone listening to this.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Blain Wease, thanks, man. Let's hit some golf balls again soon.
I would like that a lot. And I just want to thank the audience again for anyone that's still on. Thanks for joining us today. Much appreciated. Great conversation. And I love this format of making this conversational, Charlie. This was really a much more engaging way to do it.
Yeah, you brought a ton of value, Blain. Thank you, man.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.